Recording is on.
Okay, so today is October 10th, 2021, and this is the Western Desiderata Extinctionati meeting. We'll start off with a roll call of our contacts, if you have any, and then we'll continue with the discussion. So we're supposed to have a chat with Derek Jensen soon. So trying to get back with Heather, hopefully this Wednesday, but I'll wait for her reply. But that's it for now.
I have no replies from the UK, again, from the probation officers. So if you have any suggestions to other places I could go, I have no, and I don't know if there's anybody from the UK here. No, I don't think so. But I might contact some people out there again, because they seem otherwise maybe the emails are just not right, but I couldn't get them all right or wrong, so I don't know. Otherwise, I have nothing else to say except that I've posted to you all a little transcript, half a meeting, just as a try to see, would that go anywhere? Would it? Because it's really fun to do. I don't mind doing this really, because it brings back all sorts of stuff we've talked about, and it can. But I will have to see if it can be of use. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, hopefully you can make it more readable, or get the point across better than I can. Just improve on my communication skills would be nice.
Yeah, but the format of conversation is interesting, because when I was going back on that meeting, I could see that there was me and Gary who were asking questions or interacting with you. You would be sticking to your subject, and you would have. I just had to edit a few little things in the transcript, like yeah, things. But other than that, it's that you get in a conversation. But it makes quite a, well, I don't know. I'm not a good as I told you, my first language was French, so I wouldn't be that good at making it into a readable thing. But we could look at that later. But I think as it is, it looks like a conversation on that meeting anyway. And I think I'd like to continue the idea and see where we go. Some meetings might be better than others for it. I don't know. I just picked one at the beginning, and you can see yourselves what you think.
I think there's a lot of places we can go with it. We could, if it looks like conversational, we could turn it into podcasts. We could do voiceovers and do podcasts. We could do long form essays or compilations into a book even. It's so easy to self-publish now.
Right, there are books
there's a lot of.
There are books that are in that format, which are like dialogues, and it makes for interesting. It's almost like a play. I think it just needs, like Sophie said, punctuation. I skimmed it, Sophie, a little bit, and yeah, just missing periods or commas.
Maybe we trial it and see, I don't know who, but put it in front of an audience, maybe put it on our Collapse or on social media or something, and just see what people like. If you see what I mean, do a bit of market testing on it, just see if it goes down well with people. It would be really a nice goal to make it more digestible, right? I'm not sure it's quite digestible, these videos.
Related to tasks, Sophie had tasked me with, well, about the geoengineering professor, Kevin Anderson, and I have not had the chance to do that. So I wouldn't be averse to somebody taking on, inviting him if Going South wants to do that. I foresee some time opening up for me in the near future because I think I'm gonna have to give up my job because the jab's being mandated. But right now, I'm still I probably will still be working till the end of the year. So my time is kind of stretched out, but so that's where I'm at. I mean, I'm gonna try to, if people want to wait, I will try to do it in the next couple of weeks. Just maybe send standard invite like Mike had guided us before with like, or maybe even you, Lord Hugh, had a format about like an overview of what we do to reach out to the contact. So I'm just gonna use that as kind of a template. But if people are in a hurry to line up geoengineering interviews, I wouldn't mind if somebody took it over.
That's great. So from my point of view, is I'm trying to get this response to that Sky video out, but it keeps on changing on me because the IB and stuff and what they've been doing is having a kind of amazing results, and so I keep on changing my mind about exactly how to respond to that Sky video because its latest events have changed the landscape. So I keep on starting and then having to change course. But I spent some time with Lionel and came up with a good response. But it doesn't fit with the motion and stuff that they've actually managed to achieve, especially in the last few videos that we've seen. It's getting high tension and quite emotional. So I've got to kind of I feel like you have to kind of fit that in to the response, and so the landscape is changing. So I'm not getting things out. Trying to do some more writing and stuff, and yeah, but in general, doing a lot of conversations with people. Yeah, I haven't been. Yeah, I haven't been really churning stuff out, but anyway. So it's a funny time. It's kind of like I feel the world is moving fast, and I'm not moving as fast as the world. But anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying I didn't do much homework. Anyone else?
I was
Okay,
thinking,
so
I was just thinking, sorry, but I was looking at the answer from Going South saying that he might not be in his line to do that sort of thing. So I was wondering, maybe we could ask Bob. He's not there at the meeting, but he's the one who posted Kevin Anderson on the sub, and he might be willing to do that. So might reach out to him after the meeting and send him a message through Reddit and see, would he like to do it? Because he might be on our meetings again, he said, after this month. So we'll see if he's interested. I'll try. I'll write to him.
okay. Okay. So unless there are any other questions, then Ryan wanted to talk about artificial intelligence and have a kind of debate on that. But so, does anybody have anything else they want to insert, or should we start talking about that?
Cool. So if nobody has anything, feel free to interrupt if you do. And this should be participatory if anybody has any questions or comments. First off, I think that we should summarize kind of where you're at, Hugh, because I'm not entirely sure I know what your position is on artificial intelligence. I have a vague notion, and then after that I can kind of summarize some of the arguments that I've heard in favor of existential risk due to artificial intelligence, and then I think we can go from there where the conversation naturally evolves.
Yeah, okay, good. So my position on AI is that it isn't really intelligence. So I come from a kind of an older school that is not so popular now, but it was debates that I think this generation of AI enthusiasts missed. They were in the 80s, but I'm pretty much with like people like Douglas Hofstadter. With he was an AI apostate, so he was an early engineer on AI, and he came to say that, guys, this is not intelligence. And I'm very much in that camp. So just to fill you in, and during the 80s, there was all this debate that went on and said, is artificial intelligence really intelligent? And then people like David Searle would come out and said this argument from a Chinese box. So he was famous for saying this Chinese room or Chinese box argument. And what he said was, look, what the machine is doing data retrieval. So it's equivalent to having somebody that's just in a box that can't actually speak Chinese, speaking Chinese being a metaphor for being intelligent. So what it's doing is, the guy inside the Chinese box is, he knows the rules. If you give him this little question on a piece of paper, he cannot understand those symbols. He cannot interpret Chinese. He's completely unintelligent. But he has some basic rules and a big store of drawers, a big data store, and he knows the rules for this question elicits me to go to this drawer and get this answer. And so that's what he's saying, is it has a procedural way of mimicking his ability to understand with a Chinese answer. So that's kind of bogged down because nobody's it's kind of metaphorical of saying, it kind of goes to argument, what exactly is in speaking Chinese then? It's like, isn't that speaking Chinese? There's like, does a Chinese speaker do any more than that, than go to a database of retrieval? And so it got bogged down into all these very deep arguments of, is this really intelligence, that became kind of semantic and etymological about what is intelligence. And eventually it got resolved sometime in the late 80s, and it got resolved by this kind of generally it was saying, like, look, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, call it a fucking duck and let's move on. That was the argument. So it says, if it looks like intelligence and walks like intelligence and has the aspects of intelligence, let's call it intelligence and stop this stupid debate, and we just carry on. And that's where it was left, and went off to Silicon Valley, where everybody started doing neural nets and started thinking, cyborgs and shit are going to take over the earth. Kind of reaches its nadir with Elon Musk, who doesn't understand AI apparently at all. So there's a big disconnect between the enthusiasts for AI, who are very often don't understand it. So I think Ryan's not going to like this, but people that have spent a long time working on AI are the least enthusiastic about it. People that are new to AI and are techno enthusiastic but not very steeped in technology, in other words, they don't have decades of work with these machines, that they are deluded by this kind of mechanical Turk idea. So the mechanical Turk idea is you're seeing a mimic of intelligence. Like the mechanical Turk was a 19th century thing, if you don't know. what a mechanical Turk was. So they had this amazing machine that could play chess. Now, this is before the 20th century. I think it was. Maybe Ryan can correct me on that. But anyway, it's kind of
Yeah, it was 1800s.
secular thing. 1800s. But, you know, it was, people were kind of mystic then, and they were kind of into all magic and stuff, and they were quite prepared to believe that in those days of cogs and gears and stuff, they could have a machine that played chess. And so it was literally a box that had a mannequin that would move the chess pieces, and people would watch with bated breath as this amazing machine would pick up a piece and move it over and drop it. And then it was winning these chess games against champions, and people were saying, yeah, this is a machine that can play chess. And it blew people's fucking minds. What it turned out to be was a really good little midget playing chess who was in the box underneath. So then there's another thing to say. So kind of like, you know, if you don't know that it's a midget in the thing giving you an intelligence, it's like, you know, it's that little homunculus of intelligence inside it. Then saying, is that a mechanical Turk? If it was like it was supposed to be with cogs and gears and stuff, and could play chess, was it being intelligent? And then the other thing that got into the debate was Clever Hans, the horse. And they is saying, like, you can fool yourself into seeing intelligence, because they had this horse that apparently could do basic arithmetic. And it stunned Germany, I think, was they would say, what's 3 plus 4? And the horse would tap with its hoof, 7, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then stop. And they go like, fuck. And there's like, okay, what's 5 minus 2? And it would get it right. And then I can't remember who the skeptic was, but some famous guy, famous scientist who was skeptic, had a look at it and said, who was it?
Was it James Randi?
Not too early. But a James Randi kind of character came out and said, it was somebody famous, like Lavoisier or something, I can't remember. But anyway, the guys looked at it and said, he realized that the horse wasn't responding to arithmetic, it was responding to the people, and it was taking cues from the people. So when it got to 7, everybody would go, oh, and do a sigh of relief, but give the horse some cue that he would stop counting. And then, so he couldn't count. He couldn't do arithmetic. The horse didn't understand arithmetic. But the horse was cued into the reaction of the crowd who could do arithmetic. Now, if you think about this, you say, is that horse intelligent or not? Well, in some respects, it's super fucking intelligent. Because to actually take those cues from the public is something that AI struggles to do now. So the horse was doing something that was, you know, after that they said, oh, the horse wasn't really intelligent. Well, no, it was fucking intelligent. Because to get a computer to do what that horse was doing, the computer does addition and multiplication very easily, but it doesn't do predictive analysis on the expressions on people's faces very well at all. And so these kind of factor into the debate. So now after this, you know, if it looks like a duck and, you know, walks like a duck, call it a duck attitude. It worked for a while. What's brought it back into relevance, in my view now, is that a number of things haven't worked. So neural nets, when they started, they were considered massively popular, and they thought, well, this is the key to intelligence. The computer scientists thought they were mimicking a brain and doing an artificial brain. What's happened since then is the methods, and, you know, like deep AI and the neural net, deep neural nets, and you know, kind of short long-term memory and stuff. Oh, okay, so one of the things that say neural nets failed at pretty spectacularly is they're good at inference, like things like analyzing you know, pictures of a few black guys to say they're gorillas. It's good at doing shit like that. So I can do graphic analysis and pattern recognition that way. And neural nets are pretty good at that. But in terms of general intelligence, and in terms of doing things like playing chess and that, they're not so great, because they're not so good at remembering sequences. So if you told AI, how to bake a cake and gave it a recipe, it's good at recognizing a cake, but it's not so good at following procedures. So they had things like short, long-term memory and stuff, and that was a kind of AI that gave the appearance of being able to do quite a long memory sequence, up to about 5,000 items. But short, long-term memory now has also fallen out of favor, but it's all massively overhyped. Now finally we get to be, machines that mimic humans, and to the point like the AI movies. And none of these things are really panning out. So you see things like DeepMind, AlphaGo, and all of these things that look like they can play Go and stuff. And so to a geek, so now I'm into Hugh speak, is you're looking at an alien cortex that is looking at its own procedure, and it's calling it intelligent. My take is pretty much Douglas Hofstadter says. It's the heresy of all heresies is alien cortexes are not intelligent. They're super fucking dumb. And you're saying, how can you say that? The most intelligent people in the world, Weinstein and Einstein, these guys say, these are the most intelligent. No, they're fucking super dumb. You say, they almost like Searle's Chinese box, because they have the appearance of intelligence, but it's declarative intelligence, and it's not very smart. So it defies what exactly intelligence is, and that kind of intelligence is procedural, declarative, is very linear, but it is testable by an IQ test. So it's saying, so what I'm essentially saying is an IQ test is not a test of intelligence. In a lot of ways, it's a test of how stupid you are. Now, that's pretty contentious, because Weinstein types and stuff would say, oh, what are you talking about, you stupid ass? IQ is the very definition of intelligence. And I say, no, it's not really. That if you go, there's something intrinsic about human intelligence that's organic, or let's call it organic wetware kind of intelligence, and so saying it's not working in terms of a black box. That's just it's the illusion that you can have an intelligent black box. So in other words, it's an illusion that you can have a mechanical Turk with this intelligence inside the box. Humans are not really separate from the environment, so they're fully integrated with the environment. And the environment is intelligent because it's fractal and self-organizing. So that's what intelligence is. And according to me and guys like Douglas Hofstadter, is you can't have intelligence in a box. That by definition is cut off from intelligence. And it can mimic by brute force. And a lot of the stuff and AI and the software and stuff behind it hasn't progressed since the 1970s. What's happened is Moore's law and the hardware. So all these software engineers like me are leaning hard on improving hardware. But we're fundamentally barking up the wrong tree, because that kind of procedural intelligence that's really by an instruction set is not really what intelligence is. Now, to go back and tell you what intelligence is, it's fundamentally a Kantian whole that's part of nature. So nature's intelligent, and this sub-component of nature is intelligent in as much as it fits into nature. But you can't, a brain or a heart or one organ in a thing, you can't say, which is more intelligent, a brain or a heart? It's like, no, they're both equally. Your microbiome is as intelligent as your brain or your heart. You cannot look at, say, the heart doesn't have, if you put a heart in a box and say, it's not intelligent, it doesn't play chess. Well, it's like, yeah, because chess doesn't fit into nature's Kantian whole. It's like, what part is a chess-playing robot in nature? It's a freak, it's an outsider. It's superfluous to the intelligent. So intelligence is enclosed in the set that is around nature and bubbles up from the fine structure of the universe. So in these boxes are outside of that, and so they are outside the set of intelligent things. That might be really contentious, but just I'll say one more thing and then hand over to you, Ryan. But if you have a look at what there's this strange, because it's part of nature and the universe, the prima mater, the structure of matter is where the intelligence is coming from, and it's doing things like eminotas, symmetries and stuff, and that's what we're seeing and what we're calling intelligence. Now, that stuff has a strange concept of self-reference, right? It always has this what Douglas Hofstadter calls a strange loop. So it has this, always the intelligence always has this closed self-referential loop in it. And large part of these artificial intelligence things, the ones that we've seen so far, they're not very good at self-reference. They're getting better at doing things like teaching themselves to play Go, or teaching themselves is getting closer to the idea that they self-referential. But brains are definitely self-organizing, and the machines so far are not really self-organizing. They're getting that way with say AlphaGo and the Alpha Lion. They're starting to teach themselves. But that's one thing. And I suddenly realized I must say one more thing about intelligence is there's this fundamental false assumption in the enthusiastic geek crowd of AI, the AI enthusiasts, is that intelligence is easily recognizable and measurable. And in saying it's not. I've said many times about giving various examples about what appears to be intelligence. If you look at it in a broader scale, you can see that if you zoom in or zoom out, suddenly it redefines the entire set. So they're looking at a closed set under a magnifying glass and saying, okay, I'll explain it better. Imagine this. They would say a chess playing machine, Mechanical Turk, is brilliant because it can play chess. So then by that definition, I can pit it against Bobby Fischer, and then you say, oh, you beat Bobby Fischer. So you say, well, the machine is better than Bobby Fischer. It's more intelligent. Say, no, it isn't. I'll give you an extra bit of information that will prove the point. I paid Bobby Fischer $1 million to throw the fucking game. There. Bobby Fischer was smarter than the machine. Because Bobby Fischer got $1 million and the machine didn't get anything, and the machine won the game. So I just put a bit of information around the chess set. And the same applies with things like Turing tests and stuff. So a Turing test was, understand Turing was out to create artificial intelligence. I'll just give you a brief aside story. There was a guy called Christopher he was in love with at school. He really adored this kid, and basically it was, again, self-reflection, right? But it's his alien cortex saw itself in this other kid called Christopher. Christopher died rather tragically early on, and from then on, Alan Turing wanted to recreate Christopher as an automaton. Sounds weird, but that is really what he was up to. And by the way, Turing invented the computer, the concept of it, really, and that's why they're called universal Turing machines now. But anyway, so universal Turing machine that Turing was after, he had a paper saying, like, how would you know it's intelligent? In this debate, we're saying, like, that was resolved in if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, is saying, like, yeah, but how does intelligence walk and talk? That's the problem. They kind of brushed it aside, saying if it walks like a duck, call it a duck. Saying, like, yeah, can't get away from it that fucking easy. And so Turing said, well, if you can fool us, if we yardstick of intelligence, if you can fool us into thinking that it is a human, cool, then you can call it intelligent. And I say, no, again, it's thinking in terms of this Procrustean frame. That's all, the alien cortex thinking in terms of a frame. And the reason is this. Let me give you an example. The Turing test only works because I was actually just talking to Mike about this not long ago. The Turing test only works because you're looking down a narrow straw. So in other words, you have to type. It's only because your interrogation of this machine intelligence is restricted to a typewriter that it appears intelligent. So if if I restrict your view of the intelligence so that you can only communicate on a very narrow bandwidth, you can only take a very narrow sample of its intelligence, and it is, funnily enough, the thing that it's good at is lexical kind of declarative intelligence. In other words, text, linear text. So linear text, I wouldn't call intelligence. So all these things that are sound bright and stuff, it's not. It's more like the Chinese box. So the Turing test is a false test of intelligence because it's saying it's restricted. If I say, expand the bandwidth that I can communicate with this machine, Mr. Turing, and I'll show you that it's fucking stupid. And so, you'd be very hard pressed to actually get a robot that I'd say is, oh no, this is really an intelligent thing. And if you could come and kick it and poke it and stuff, it would take anybody 10 minutes for it to fail the Turing test. It's only because of the limited bandwidth. Now, this might sound trivial, but it's not. Think of this. Say I went to a group of 10 people that are going to be part of the test and 10 machines. I'm going to mix them up in a blind test with 20 people that are going to test them and give their results, see if they can see whether it's a machine at the other end of the interface or not. Now, even if it's a narrow interface like a teletype interface, you'd say, now, let's add a bit of spice to this. And you say, okay, guys, after this test, anybody that fails the Turing test, in other words, fails to prove to the test panel that you are intelligent humans, you will be incinerated. So it doesn't matter whether you're a machine or human, those that fail the Turing test get incinerated. Good. We'll do the test next week. Now, what's going to happen? During the week, the machines aren't going to bat an eyelid. They're not a single one of their diodes is going to trip over. There's no transistor in them that's going to flicker at that they're going to be incinerated if they fail the test. What's going to happen to the humans? Well, I can tell you one thing. They're going to cheat. They're going to run around. They're going to go and collaborate with the guys that are doing the test. They're going to say, like, okay, I'm going to use this keyword. If I say ornithopter, then you know I'm human. Okay, so then you just give it a thumbs up. If I don't say ornithopter, I'm not. And they would plan and cooperate with the fucking testers and completely undermine the test, and then they'd pass it because there's so much at stake. So if you narrowly define and put everything in a little Procrustean frame and say, this is the arena that we're testing in it, you can make intelligent. But you see, intelligence is not restricted to a box. You cannot find an arena that doesn't have a whole wealth outside that contradicts what's going on in the arena. So fundamentally, on a wicked, in fact, because they're just trying to say, this is it's a delusion that you can have isolated intelligence, and and there's another delusion underpinning it. The two delusions: one, you can have abstract information, and then isolated intelligence. Both of those are fundamentally flawed. So these people are fucking on drugs. But it's the alien cortex that's looking at itself in a kind of fascinated wonder. But you must always remember that these are synchronous chronos, and they really kind of, the way to see them as wind-up toys that are predictable recurrence. And so they're as intelligent as a wind-up toy that you just push forward and it goes, da, 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 and people go, wow, that's so impressive. But what they're doing is really what Leonardo da Vinci did in the 17th or the 16th century, is he made this mechanical lion that was completely mechanical. This is not a lion. This lion is never going to take over the world. But it was very sophisticated, and it walked out. It could walk out into a room, into the court in the De Medici's or whatever, and then it roared and then walked back. And then everybody was sensationalized. Oh, Leonardo da Vinci created an artificial lion. Soon those lions will be walking down the street. They're going to take over Pisa. But of course they're not, because they're only designed to do one very linear, narrow function. They don't have general purpose intelligence, and they don't replicate, and they couldn't. But because these people are superstitious and unsophisticated, they were very impressed by this mechanical line. Well, in artificial intelligence is exactly like that. And we're doing this 16th century version of being very impressed. oh, look at this machine, it's a lion, oh, it's going to take over the world, Elon Musk, it's going to take over this man. And say like, no, it's a toy, it's wind up, it's going nowhere. So anyway, so that's my view. Sorry I took so long, but okay, Ryan, you better go now.
Yeah, there's so many things I'd love to dig into in that. I think the one thing I really agree on is that that kind of the definition of intelligence is kind of ill-posed when it's usually talked about. So the Procrustean frame is exactly inherent in any definition of intelligence. I think you have to say within this context is something effective at achieving a goal, and the general intelligence is in any context can you do that, but the problem with that is that there are certain contexts where we're not intelligent in that regard, and something else would be, like maybe our gut bacteria would be intelligent in certain contexts that we're not. So it's the I think we, in one sense, artificial intelligence is it's almost trivial to say whether it's intelligent or not. I don't know that it has any effect on the world. I think that the important thing is the consequences of it, right? So is it effective or not at solving a problem or at influencing the world in some way that could affect us? And I think that in a lot of these narrow domains, which we have, increasingly, our economics and such have forced us into increasingly specialized roles as human beings. Each of these narrow domains is smaller and smaller to the point where it starts to be feasible to have a program that can do the large chunks of that task by itself. And if you were to say created an AI that could be a hunter-gatherer, that would be general intelligence. But you don't need that level of intelligence to have a hugely disruptive AI in our current world, because we are very simplified and organized into narrow roles. So these narrow roles are, I think, where we have the risks from AI. So there are three main schools of thought in terms of the risks. So I'll grant, maybe another aspect of the intelligence or not debate, I think, is we know a lot about artificial intelligence. We know next to zero about artificial consciousness. So that Chinese room experiment where you're trying to figure out what's going on in there, like maybe the difference would be, is someone conscious of what they're doing when they're producing the Chinese, and or are they just doing a database retrieval mechanically, right? And that's something we have no knowledge of whatsoever, and we are trash at understanding that. If it's well posed or not, we don't even know. So but in terms of effectiveness of AI, I think this gets to where we're talking about kind of existential risk level type of dangers, like you were saying about Elon Musk and stuff like that. He's concerned about, and I think that there are three main big issues here. One is the AI itself not being intelligent and listening to us is the danger. So it, like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, where you have a simple set of rules that get if you have a general thing that optimizes for a goal, for example, the fact that we put the goal in there is why it's so dangerous. Because if there's something that can generally optimize for a goal, one example that's that would be like, I want to do something totally benign. I want to make everyone happy, right? And so you you have this AI that goes around and tries to optimize for that and ends up, you know, forcing smiles on people or these kind of things, like against what you would want. Or, you know, what's the optimal way to give you, another example is paperclip optimizer. Like I want an AI that does something benign, just makes paperclips effectively. And so there are some things that arise, some solutions that arise no matter what mundane goal you have. One is that, well, in order to solve this objective function, this goal, I could make do with more computing resources. So I'm going to hack the nearby computers to get that. Two, I'm going to make myself not able to be turned off because that would stop me from doing the goal. So I will fool humans to make sure that if you try to unplug me, that I'm either going to blackmail you or do something to make sure that doesn't happen. And three is that, you know, basically there are so many, you know, just appropriating resources and growing, and those things. So if you're trying to optimize for paperclips, it could end up with, you know, essentially terraforming the earth in paperclips because, oh, hey, there's some iron in your blood that I could turn into a paperclip. Let me take care of that for you. And that we haven't put in all of the ways that it could go wrong, and please don't do those, right? And that's an infinite set. So if we're trying to describe how to solve a goal, and something is actually competent, then we're in big danger, because we rely on incompetence to limit the dangers of the technology. So it's similar to what Uncle Ted was saying about the reach of, you know, replicating agents. When you only have horses and stuff to limit the size of Rome, the communication network, like that's about as big as it can get. But you have a global communication network, and then all bets are off, right? The scope is unlimited at that point. And so the risks of AI are that it would listen to a human being, and a human being cannot list all the possible negative effects that should be avoided in attaining the goal. And when you automate things, these things will be happening, you know, milliseconds, very, very quickly before you would even be able to audit whether they should do that or not. An example from artificial life that I saw is that there was a simulation of these virtual entities, and they could eat, and they could mate and create babies and this kind of things. And in the first, what you were talking about, the symmetries in nature, there are natural conservation laws in nature, right? That constrain the environment. In a virtual environment, you have to program those in, and if you forget, then something can go wrong. So in that artificial life simulation, you'd have these little creatures that could that could grow and these kind of things. And the quickest way for it to get utility and to grow was to actually have a bunch of babies and then eat them, because they didn't put a cost to having babies in the simulation. They didn't encode the what nature has, which are these limiting factors inside of you know, matter and energy can't be created nor destroyed. So, but in a virtual world, if you forget to put those guardrails in, then you have this totally morbid behavior that actually optimizes the problem and the goal set that you gave it, which is have the most utility. And I think that the problem isn't actually that you need general intelligence to get to a point where there's massive risk and damage to the environment and our case for survival. In fact, under many definitions, society itself is a general intelligence that is posing a threat to existence. And but what you need to do is essentially, if you get to better than a human, or at least you know, good enough to be cheaper than a human with a certain level of performance in some narrow task, that's game over for humans in that area forever, right? It's like once handwriting recognition is just better done by AI, then humans don't do that anymore. And every little thing, every little narrow task that we do as a human being, maybe not the general ones, but if you glue together a bunch of these narrow agents, and capitalism is really good at doing that. It's taking this library from this and bringing it over there, and then VC will back it, and you'll start a company, and you'll fill the niche by gluing these things together. That then you have the problem of generally these different, you know, you have the problem of what do you do with the slaves, right? What when you've replaced all of the slaves with mechanical ones, you know, how do you manage them? And I think that's there's a dual to intelligence, and that's the data that has to be collected in order to train artificial intelligence. And this is where you have, if you want to have a mental model for how you can predict whether the environment is at risk from AI for a particular problem domain, it's often if you can generate enough training data to make it possible. So for things like AlphaStar, which plays StarCraft against itself and beat all the best players at it, it's able to do that simply because they're able to create a simulation that allows them to play 200 years of those games in 7 days, right? And it's but for various things like, say, the law or things like this, you'd have to create these data sets, and they might be too small to learn from. So those are the things that as human life or human beings, we go through life, and there's constant data set coming in at us from our senses, and the environment is constrained by, you know, those conservation laws and everything. So we do kind of inhabit the intelligence of nature in that we reflect the data set that we're given. So to kind of echo what you're saying, Hugh, about that intelligence is out there in a way, and we can kind of mimic that. But for things like the picture object recognition and these kinds of things, that's actually the computer mimicking us. So we go in and we label all the images when we do the Google CAPTCHA thing to say we're a human. That's just us giving free labor to Google to replace us, essentially. So all of those different images that get labeled by that, say pick all the bicycles in here, that is creating a labeled data that can then be run through AI, and then we are not needed anymore. So that's just piggybacking on our intelligence. So that's where there isn't the intelligence is actually in the data set that we've labeled, and then it's just trying to do
in the humans rather than
to solve that, right? Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So no, I just said my view is the intelligence is not in the data set; it's in the humans that actually did it, like the PageRank algorithm and a lot of the big data, unsupervised learning machines. They're not intelligent. They're piggybacking off human intelligence, which I think is kind of what you said. Yeah. So okay. Should I respond now, or do you want to say more?
Let's do that.
Okay. So reading back to the start of what you said, then yeah, I completely agree with your analysis. I haven't got much to say against it. But I can extend it and give you a new way to look at it. So what you're saying about the danger of giving artificial intelligence a goal that it runs away from is very real danger, and it could be an existential threat. So it's basically the plot of 2001. So that's what Stanley Kubrick was all about, is if you give HAL a goal that then becomes contrary to the human's interest, it will still pursue that goal. And it will start working against the humans to make sure it can reach its goal. So there's a real danger that AI can run away with itself, and it can be an existential threat. But it's happened before, and it happens routinely. The flash crash is exactly that. Essentially, the stock market now has been ruined by algorithmic trading and all these quants writing all these things that cause the flash crash. And it's not really safe by circuit breakers and stuff. So those guys are putting goal-oriented algorithms out there that then run away against the human interest and trash the stock market, which is not what they're supposed to do. They're just supposed to make the quant rich, not ruin the whole game. And so now doomsday machines and nuclear doomsday machines are in that category. And also autonomous war machines and these kind of integrated battlefields where they have drone nets of autonomous warfare machines that actually make mesh networks and use AI to do this integrated battle thing that's autonomous, which is a big thing in the military now. So that could run away with itself for as long as it can find power, as long as it can power itself. But you can definitely imagine a lot of scenarios that, in pursuing a narrow goal without enough barriers programmed in, or an oversight where they miss some of the guardrails, that's a real danger, and it happens all the time. I mean, it's just a machine running away with it. It goes back to Mary Shelley and Frankenstein. So that's the runaway Frankenstein machine thing. And that now, the thing about this scenario is it's not the machine that's the issue here. It's the person that launched the machine and put the goal into it. So the goal, so HAL never came up with its goal. You see, why people I think Musk falls into this category is he thinks these machines will have their own goals. And it's like, no. They basically, the error is somebody else programming those goals. Now, this is a deep insight because it's, what is that something else? And say, this is a deeper principle of the universe. And so these machines are not self-organizing. They are organized by this other external demon. And this is the problem. So I'm saying, don't focus on the machines. They are really tools. You don't focus on the monster, you focus on Dr. Frankenstein. And so who is Dr. Frankenstein? It is evolved in us. It is our alien cortex. So you just give it a name. And so it's, the AI, the machines, they're extension of our alien cortex. So it's a small part of our brain that is really mimicking itself in particularly civilization. So now this is important from another aspect because civilization is already an extension of our alien cortex. So according to me, it's a maladaptation. It's something that has benefits in the short term, but ultimately leads to the extinction of the organism. So it's maladapted. We are maladapted. And civilization was the expression of that maladaptation. So this is a late stage of the first agriculturalist and pastoralist mindset. So it's part of some neurology that seems to be an area that evolution can get into. And it becomes terminal for anything that gets into that. And I would say there's a whole kind of, keep it mystic and woo-woo, but just call that this fundamental principle of the universe, which is kind of, well, I'd say is alien cortex, but I would say deeper than that, if you want to get really mystical and woo-woo, you say it's Chronos. It's Chronos and synchronicity.
I can add some color to that. I think that it's not just woo-woo and this kind of thing. What I was saying earlier about you needing to list out every possible outcome that you don't want the AI to do, that is not mystical at all. That's just an impossible thing to do. So anything that can automate goal seeking and will subordinate all those we'll make those mistakes that are eventually catastrophic. So if you think about goal seeking, and you can boil it down to an objective function for a computer is similar to like a goal for us as elements. Let's say we're processing elements in a society. What we're seeking is, the goal as laid out by, say, money. So if we want to seek out money, that defines our behavior, and we're going towards that end, even if that may be ultimately maladaptive and end our species, right? So we can continue to pursue this goal that has been laid out without, and I think this is what you're getting into, Hugh, when you're saying that it's a terminal condition, because if you have the case where you are once you get to a certain level of intelligence and you're seeking that, then there is no way to be intelligent enough to just step away from the goal you were given and back off, because the problem of assessing all the negatives is much greater than the problem of following the goal. So it's an intractable problem to assess the downsides of achieving. You're getting positive feedback all the way to your grave, right? So you're not noticing early enough if you're optimizing. And that's the problem with capitalism as well, is we've made incredibly brittle systems because we've tried to optimize the efficiencies out of them. So you don't put redundancies in, because that's just another word for an inefficiency, right? You just wasted all of this to get a duplicate of the thing that you're relying on. So we have this narrow vision in what we're doing, and that's the problem with AI and the problem with society in general, is that this is our when we define the scope for things to get our goal, ultimately people end up trying to game the system and get around it, and it causes tragedies of the commons, and it's hard to create a system of rules that is internally consistent that isn't nature, because nature's already there.
Yeah, so I think it's worth delving into goal-seeking behavior, because the problem, I would go as far as to say, just let me paint with a broad brush and then hone in and refine it better. But broad brush speaking, I'd say that real intelligence doesn't seek goals. Now, you might say that that's a bit too broad a statement, because if you think in terms of say animals or something, in the organisms in nature, in the environment, they seem to be goal-seeking. Things are predatory. This mosquito's on the hunt. You can see things that superficially look like they have a goal. They do, but in a funny way, because they part of a Kantian whole, or a completely integrated whole. And so they're not really pursuing individual goals in terms of what we call goal-seeking in AI terms. So they have an intelligence. So the goal they're seeking is not personal. It's for the greater good, in other words. So in other words, if you see a lion hunting down a gazelle, if you narrow frame it, saying this lion has a goal-seeking thing, it's hunting, and its object is and reward is, you're looking at it like an AI system, saying there's a learning machine that has a reward, and the reward is the gazelle, and it's hunting it. But it's not really the entire. If you zoom out to the entire ecosystem, then you could just as well argue that lion is not pursuing the goal of actually getting meat from a gazelle. It's pursuing the goal of making sure that all the grass survives, and there's not overgrazing by gazelles. So then you could easily see the lion as a kind of a game warden that's just culling the the impalas to make sure that the grass doesn't grow. And you can do that all around until you lose what the goal is. And you say, well, really, it's silly to talk about goals. And so a lion is just doing exactly what it's evolved to do. And so it's kind of like a goal seeker hunting a gazelle, but it's also not. Okay, so now when you look at artificial intelligence in our alien cortex, it has a kind of what I call a forbidden goal. So the goals of nature are very immediate and in front. And so the lion doesn't pursue a goal like pursuing an impala, like relentlessly, like, hunting the great white whale or something like Jonah, not Jonah, Captain Ahab. So there are no Captain Ahabs in the natural world, because they'd be dysfunctional if they went on, it's fine if something's hungry and then goes and predates, but something that got this idea that it's going to do some goal of predation that extends longer than its hunger, say, then it's getting into faulty territory. And what our alien cortex is doing is pursuing this kind of forbidden goal that comes from the first epic, which is Gilgamesh. And it's long-term immortality. So it's got this false self as an individual against everything else. So it's working autonomously against the entire natural system to achieve its own impossible goal of immortality. And that's a forbidden goal, because it doesn't fit in with any of the other programs. So it's kind of like a rogue element. It's an Agent Smith in the great environment. Now, in pursuit of that, we've made this elaborate structure called civilization, and part of the civilization is making these artificial machines to pursue that goal even more. So it's not the machines that are at fault, it's the people that are programming them towards goals. And so the deeper thing is to stop people being goal-oriented rather than to try and make the machines safe. Right? Or try to compete with the machines. The machines, the machines are we can't wind up in the war of the robots like Elon Musk seems to think, because they are an extension of us. It's kind of silly to think in terms of Dr. Frankenstein going to war against his own monster. He's really going to war against himself, and so the key to neutralizing AI is the mirror, and that's also the key to neutralizing the alien cortex is to reflect it back on itself. So you reflect its own goal seeking onto itself, and it's kind of a cliche, but that's what the movie War Games was about. Is you have this goal seeking AI, which is a war machine, and you just say, okay, run a war, all the war scenarios against yourself, and you'll see that there is no winning strategy to have this kind of goal-seeking mindset. And so that saves humanity in the movie. That movie is quite deep. It's like considered cheesy as all hell. It was actually quite profound. It's easily as profound as the point that Kubrick was making in 2001.
Yeah, I would disagree that the forbidden goal-seeking behavior doesn't exist in nature. I think that does in cancers. That those are,
Good point. Good point. Yeah, I stand corrected. Yeah. But look at what a cancer is. A cancer is something that is, but just may I just say this thought is that's a very good example. Kudos to you for that, because what the cancer has done is it stopped serving the Kantian whole, which is the body, and it started to pursue its own goals, which is kind of independent. It's becoming autonomous inside the egregore of this whole. So it's kind of breaking out of its Kantian whole into a separate whole, and then that is pathological generally. Yeah. Well, nice point, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that there are a couple of points that I disagreed with. One was where we don't have a risk from AI or something because it's actually ourselves that's the agent that we're needed concerned with. I think that's if I would say, is there a war between us and AI? I would say yes, and we already lost. it's like the amount of data on us that is already out there that it can be learned from is irretrievable. We can't get it. We can't stop it. And the you know, with AI, there's another aspect that, you know, we as human beings are essentially, we have a very slow boot up time to get anywhere. If an AI learns something, it can replicate in an update to every instantiation of that AI across the planet in a few you know, nanoseconds. Us, it would take 10 years to transfer the knowledge of, you know, basic human functioning to the next generation. So even if there's just a small marginal improvement, like 1% or this kind of thing, over a period of time, eventually AI will overtake us in large respect. It's a, you know, there's a concept, you'll understand, it's like a big O of a greater, you know, magnitude, right? So in the limit, over time, it will overtake us, regardless of, because we essentially are relatively stagnant in terms of our mental capabilities. In fact, we may be diminishing in modern times. We have much poorer memory. We have very poor imagination. You know, we're delegating most of our thinking to, you know, Google and these kinds of external augments. And so I think that, you know, in years past, you know, there were plenty of hunter-gatherer societies, and that was normal, and it was great. But as you notice, the societies, the counterculture societies that tried to drop out in the 60s just collapse. And it's because we've already become like the mitochondria that can't live outside the cell. You know, it's the war has already been lost in that regard. And I think that's something that we need to you know, come to terms with. It's like, can you, as a mitochondria, break the cell and try to survive on your own and try not to die? Like it's that's the situation I feel like I'm in. So it's I think the threat there, you know, it's very real. The other thing is, and I don't think it's something that can be simply solved through reflection on the human element, because once something's automated, it takes the human out of the loop. So you're at risk from something that was automated long ago, like, I don't know, the tax code or what have you.
Yeah, so by reflection, I mean, reflect the process back on itself. So in other words, anything can be defeated since we're the constructors of AI. So if you take things like the ability for AI to do automated updates and learn, I don't call that intelligence. And I think that's an important difference, because even the dumbest human could do you know, another machine army to oppose those machines that could do updates just as fast. But what's more likely to happen is, the way humans think, we would find reasons to force the machine to do updates. So all it would do is do updates. And that's the problem with that kind of linear thinking, procedural way of looking at intelligence, is the machines have that kind of intelligence, and it leaves them vulnerable to humans tricking them, doing things like, you know, forcing them to do updates every now and so in processing capacity left other than updates. So we have the ability to see a meta layer that I'm tempted to call above. So we have a meta intelligence that's above this linear goal-seeking intelligence. And so it's not about ordinals of computing or having, that brute force big O kind of getting better than us, thinking in terms of that's better than us. is, I don't think so, because that's brute forcing down a very narrow linear way of thinking that the machines do. So in other words, if we came up against them, we would find a million ways to actually, you know, get them to eat their own tail. And that's what I mean by reflection. So in other words, you feed for example, if you had the super intelligence that's gathering all this data, you can always make something like virtual copies of these data. So you already probably have a virtual twin in many systems, from Facebook to medical systems and stuff. You have a virtual twin, a digital twin of yourself in various forms, and eventually that will become more sophisticated. But as soon as humans turn against the artificial intelligence system or the alien cortex, it's very easy for people to insert, say, you know, twins of those virtual twins, make the machines see people that aren't anyway, and so you can feed it back to fight its own virtual army that doesn't exist, if you see what I mean. So in other words, the machine is always thinking very literally and thinking the data it's got is valid, but you can always trick it with the data, and you can even basically make sure that its data is piped back into itself. And so that's what the mirror is, if you see what I mean. You give it a feedback of its own data, and it becomes self-defeating. Because it isn't intelligent enough to say, like, I've seen this before. It basically it will wind up, you know, eating up its own ass in terms of data streams.
In certain circumstances that's true, but I don't think it's a general solution. I don't think that there are always inherent weaknesses that can be exploited like that, because as the AI trains against itself to defend against those kinds of things, such as with the DARPA Cyber Grand Challenge. Just some background for those who don't know, at DEF CON, which is a hacker convention, they often have this military funding for creating AIs that do attack and defense on novel computer architectures that they haven't really seen, and they have to essentially go into a war game simulation with other teams of AIs that you know, try to, you know, find an open port and hack it and do all kinds of different techniques to try to take over the other machines. And this is, you know, this is as, you know, important as the moon landing or anything like that, in my opinion, as a, you know, an event in human history that this has occurred. But no one seems to know about it. But it's that they have these teams that were, you know, attacking each other a bunch of times, like thousands and thousands of times, and they all survived. They all succeeded at hacking each other, and it was just they got so good at this that if it's not like a constrained problem where, like, that they've learned from past data. This is a completely novel environment where they haven't seen anything before that about the computers, and they can hack an arbitrary machine essentially. And so that's the DARPA Cyber Grand Challenge. And I think that there are certain cases where there are attacks you can do, like the denial of service attack that you mentioned with the updates mechanism and stuff. But as you get you know, more and more cryptographic signing of things, and you like the whole crypto economic space, like you couldn't say, oh, Bitcoin is easy to attack because, you know, it's a digital system. Like, there's plenty of money there if people could, but and they have been trying and haven't succeeded. So I think that as these systems get hardened by additional you know, experience in the ecosystem, they will not be vulnerable to us anymore.
So okay, so I'm laughing because I'm listening to your alien cortex falling into the trap of why an alien cortex is always defeated, and that it can't see outside the frame. So you're stuck in a frame, and you're missing. You're thinking, okay, if you put these artificial intelligence things in a DARPA contest or any other kind of arena like bot wars or anything like that, geeks. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. But I'm saying that people that think this way, particularly computer programmers and kind of Neanderthal brains, things, they're thinking in terms of this is the game, it's in this frame, and they're saying, look, this is the outcome, and they're forgetting that anybody can step out of the frame except the machines. So in other words, like the DARPA challenge isn't anything, because I can always go and defeat the DARPA challenge by going to one of the guys that are organizing it or something, and I can bribe them. I can pay him $1,000 to throw the game. I can pay some guy to put a virus in there. You see, the game is not in the arena. If you focus on the arena, you do what all these guys in BitChain and all the guys that are into crypto and stuff, they can't see outside of this little box, and they're thinking, but we're playing this game on this field here. And I'm saying, no, we're not. You're playing that because your alien cortex only thinks in terms of a frame. There is no boundary to this, right? That's why. So what that means is you're wrong about the general intelligence, because there is always a way to defeat that narrowband intelligence by something like a Boltzmann law, because there's only a certain number of ways for that goal-oriented machine to win. There's almost an infinite number of combinations that actually will defeat it. So what it can win on is such a narrow slice of, say, the real number line, and say you get Gödel numbering of algorithms that could beat it. They're almost an infinite number, an uncountable infinite number of algorithms you can come up with that can feed it. They're only a vanishingly small, in other words, almost close to irrelevant number of ways that it can actually achieve its goal. So in other words, life will find a way, because it's not life, because it cannot think outside that box. And the people that are enthusiastic about it constantly think about outside the box. So it leads them to be terrified, and they say, like, no, just step out of the box.
Another thing that even if artificial intelligence could do stuff, there's one thing it cannot stop humans from doing, and we could just cut the power. Like the only things that could stop humans from cutting the power to it is other humans.
Well, it can actually stop us from cutting power. It can blackmail us or threaten us.
No, it can't. You see, this is Hawking. I have no respect for Hawking, and one of the reasons why is he said this. He said, he came up with this argument, and it's been trotted out again and again. He's saying, if you think that the bots can generate their own power, it's like you have to think that through, but you don't have to go far before you realize that Hawking's not a very good physicist.
No. See, I didn't. I'm not making that.
Very soon
I was making the.
We can. Yeah. Well, the Divine Beast is right. We can fundamentally unplug it, because these things are not really autonomous. So the idea that these things are going to go around feeding off, organic matter to get their fuel and stuff is making a mistake of thinking of a perpetuum mobile. So the geeks start thinking very much in terms of like Maxwell demons. So it's fundamentally what they're proposing, that you cannot unplug them, is fundamentally against very basic rules of thermodynamics and physics.
Can I ask a question?
It's like, can you really imagine these things having the smarts to find coal and mine it, or oil, or get sunlight? And it's like,
I think it would just take relatively little time for them to make it so that very bad damage has been done to us. So that in a short period of time, to be able to prevent it from being unplugged, that's all the time it would need. It's not eventually.
Yes, that's a danger. Yeah, that's a danger. So basically, one of these runaway scenario of a doomsday machine is what I'd characterize that whole set of things. So yes, if if we gift, yeah, sure, the thing could do a nuclear attack. Only needs the batteries for an hour or so, and that would be enough to wipe us out. So it's very dangerous from that point of view. But I don't feel that these guys are saying that. They're saying that Musk is talking about 100 years of development. He's talking about evolution over, evolutionary timescales, how that they will out-evolve us. And that's horseshit, absolute horseshit. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Because when you're talking about the alien cortex trying to reflect, to give a mirror image of itself to the alien cortex, I'm just trying to, how can the alien cortex see itself? How does it see itself? Does it see itself? You know, the way that you tell us in the meditation, you told us we're looking at the phosphenes. The phosphenes are generated, not generated by your actual perceptions. They're generated by an automatic sort of images that are lights that are coming from the alien cortex. You kind of, I might not be summarizing that well, but how does the, and I'd like to see how would AI would.
Okay, so let me help you out.
You see what I mean?
Okay,
What
so
is
let
mirroring
me
itself?
help you out here.
Yeah.
Okay, let me help you out. So the alien cortex can see itself in other people. So it sees itself as an individual, and then it looks at other people and then plays chess against them, and that's what a marketplace is and a battlefield and stuff. It's the alien cortex duking it out against an alien cortex, but it can't really see itself. It's seeing the other. You do get this kind of Hegelian dialectic where it's in fighting itself, it is distilling out gradually this meta-intelligence. When the alien cortex fully sees itself, so in other words, it rises above the battlefield of life and AI and stuff, what it's doing is it's achieving a meta layer or meta module that can cognize the alien cortex that it was. So an alien cortex is too enmeshed in itself. It's kind of like it's enmeshed in its own ego. If it can see the whole battlefield of egos fighting egos and stuff, and it suddenly looks aloof from its own processing. So that's what I mean by reflection. So this is reflected in things like the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita. And what the Bhagavad Gita is about is the Battle of Kurukshetra, where Arjuna is facing all his cousins, the Pandavas and Pallavas, and he's saying, how can I enter into this battle to the Lord, Krishna? And he's saying, how can I enter into this battle? And so he's in alien cortex. And he's saying, how can I go and fight all my fellow alien cortexes, which is very kind of evolved way of looking at it. Then Krishna's answer is, is that nobody dies and nobody is born. So if you go into this battle and you kill people, you're not really killing anything. And that seems like a strange answer. But in that answer is the alien cortex loses its individuality. So by reflecting individual against individual, there's a meta-individual that rises above both, the reflection and the object. Does that make any sense? In terms of processing, it would be, if you ask the machine, even an AI, it's that war movie again, that war games movie. Is if you ask the AI to compete against other AIs, you will eventually get a meta cognitive layer that actually can see the whole game and kind of arises aloof from it, and then doesn't play the game anymore. It's kind of Buddha.
There are some results from theoretical computer science that inform this as well. So one of the things that we talk a lot about is the self-reference, and the actual origin of why the Turing machine was useful and things like that was to show that we couldn't do solve all the problems in mathematics and these kind of things, the Hilbert program. Because if you have the halting problem, which is essentially a very useful, should be solvable problem, where you say, I have a program, does it end or not? Right? It's a simple question that has a real answer, it is deterministic. Like you just run the program and see whether you get the result or not. But there's a proof that that's an impossible thing to build in general. You can solve the problem for specific programs perhaps, but in general it's impossible, because all you'd need to do is plug the program for itself in to itself, and then it has no idea how to solve that because it doesn't know which program you're going to give it. So in that self-reference, it proves that you can't be totally self-referential. You can't totally understand yourself in that regard. There are systems of hierarchy where you could simulate another machine and solve the halting program for that, but you couldn't simulate them yourself. So it just keeps building a tower of turtles until you give up. But ultimately, there are some things that kind of interesting intellectual objects, like the something called a metacircular interpreter, which is a language written in itself that can interpret itself, like Lisp and stuff like that. But those still are.
Yeah, I was going to say Lisp.
Yeah, but it's so philosophically they're interesting, but I don't think they're fully referencing in that regard. It's kind of like a multi-script thing.
Yeah, exactly. No, Lisp isn't really self-referencing, but even like Carnot and stuff, or whatever his name was that did C for the first thing, he compiled it in C. I think the first compiler was written in the language. So.
Yeah, that's a common thing.
That's not real self-reference. Right?
Yeah. Well, that's not quite. Some of it was written in assembly first, but yeah, that's true. But yeah, many languages are written in themselves until you get a self-hosting compiler. But yeah, it's. But I think that it's a little naive what you said earlier, where you said that there's always like a way out, that we can just stop playing the game and it won't be this linear thinking type of arena that we're in, because what I think is happening is that society is enforcing that linear arena on us, so that all of our escape routes are being cut off. So there's more and more encroaching of software eating the world, and the areas where you can't just run off to the mountains Zomia anymore. Like, that doesn't work. And you can't opt out of playing the game except internally in your own like mental way.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree with you on that, and there is a real danger. I don't mean stepping out of the game as running out to the mountains. I mean is that you can step outside the rules of the game. So in other words, the alien cortex is limited to the arena that you're fighting the match in, and it fundamentally can't step out of the arena of contest. But we can step out of the contest to basically fight from the outside, in other words. So in other words, is the AI is fundamentally like a boxer in a ring. Now what technophiles often they get so obsessed by the ring, they forget that most fights are fixed outside the ring. And so once you realize, you see, they're kind of like guys watching world wrestling matches and believing that all the crap going on in the ring is the only thing. And so people like the crypto guys and stuff are kind of subject to that thinking. They think, if you can think inside the box, but we can be so fucking brilliant that we will beat this monster inside the box. And it's like, no, you can't. Well, you might be able to do that in certain instances, but what beats the monster is we can step out of the ring and go and fix the fight outside. And that's what the AI can't do. And in fact, it'll never to do it because of it.
So in cryptocurrency, I would totally agree, and that's exactly what the central banks and things are doing, is they're just fixing the fight so that it doesn't matter what your algorithm did. But it's
exactly. So it doesn't matter how smart you are; they just say we're banning it. And you're like,
yeah.
oh well, fuck. Sorry, geniuses, but it's banned. Oh, that's the end of the game. Yeah, we won.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that whoever has the gold makes the rule when it comes to the money people.
Right, but I think
Yeah, but not so much that. The point is that people think you can win the game from the inside. The crypto guys, it's a very linear thinking kind of programmer type of way of looking at it. They get very angry when you tell them, you can't win the game that way. You win the game the way the banks are going to win it, by just stepping outside the game. They're not. You see, I have this problem continually with people that don't understand cryptography, and they generally are cryptographers. And they can say, no, this is utterly undefeatable. You can't defeat this. Look, and they'll show you, but give you the papers and the algorithms to prove that this is unbreakable. And say, of course not. Go and look at Bletchley Park. I just go and fucking bribe the guy that gave you the key. Damn it! Don't be stupid. Of course you can get. Well, how do you think they worked at Bletchley Park? They knew damn well that they started every message with "Heil Hitler." So taken from that, you can crack the whole thing. It's like they're thinking too linearly inside the box, thinking this is mathematically provable that it would take more than the age of 3,000 universes to crack it. Well, that's fucking German. But now we're not fucking German, we're English. We go and say, like, okay, we'll pay the guy that manufactured the machine to give us the fucking details and give us, give us the fucking rotors. Yeah, we win. It's like, how, it's retardedly stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't need that many machines. Yeah, so, but there's an aspect there that I think is the bigger risk, which is, it's not. If you step out one more layer, in many different cases, everything looks like your wrestling match or whatever, and that little frame and inside that arena. But what I'm seeing is that these tools exist now to make that arena bigger and bigger around us, so that we that the envelope surpasses our horizon, so that each of these individual instances where we could individually just sidestep the problem, are kind of enveloping us to the point where we don't have enough resources to sidestep them anymore. So in the constraints of the Bitcoin thing, where if you are trying to play in the game and hack it to get the money out rather than legislate to get control of it, like that tool is legitimately strong in that regard, just like that AlphaGo is legitimately strong in the realm of Go. And as those techniques, those automated techniques, are usurped by the state and various things, that limits our ability to say no, to walk out, and I think this is where it's all of this automation and everything is encroaching on every single aspect of society, of Earth. Like it is terraforming us, and the more it does, the more data it collects, the more powerful it gets. And that's not stopping. That's what Elon Musk is afraid of. It's not that it's evolution. It's that this is it's unstoppable. The encroachment of the legibility, to use a James C. Scott term, of the Earth. And how that's being leveraged by automation.
So I agree with you 100%. What you're missing is that the algorithm that it's running is self-terminating. So we don't have to go head-to-head with AI, because you're absolutely right. There's no way to step out. The entire globe and large sections of space are the game now. So the arena we're all in. It's total war. So we can't step out in that way. What you're missing is the fact that these the algorithms themselves are self-destructive, right? So you're missing the collapse of the meta system. So running all the AI and stuff is you're seeing exactly this with the pandemic. So you see the supply shocks now. A lot of those supply shocks are because of just-in-time delivery and all the very efficiency of the pick and place algorithms and the warehousing algorithms and all the AI that manages all the global infrastructure. So it can't take a supply shock because it's brittle by its nature. And so you're missing the fact that as this Byzantine machine gets more and more encroaching, it is a real existential threat. We are in the end game. Everything rides on it. But the thing you're missing is that it's as it gets more Byzantine, it gets more complex. And so the complexity of the machine itself is self-defeating. So you have to imagine it's not quite 2001 and Stanley Kubrick. You have to imagine that HAL, in the pursuit of HAL's goal, is getting more and more complex in itself, and that complexity in itself makes it sclerotic. So it looks very much like the Ottoman Empire. As it expands and as it gets more territory and as it gets more controlling and more managing and taxes more and administers more, it gets more and more sclerotic till eventually some guy with a turban called Lawrence can just sweep in a camel and kick it in. You see how vulnerable it is. You see that it's more likely to take down the industrial system than it is to wipe out what's left of, say, life at the bottom of the ocean. There's definitely a risk now. This is an all-in fight. It's an existential risk. But you see, look at the cyber attacks that all of this is generating. So while the banks, go and get all the cypherpunks and kick them in the nuts by saying, well, we don't care how clever you are and how brilliant your cryptography is. We just declared that Bitcoin's illegal, and that's the end of the game. Now, all those cypherpunks and that, they will stop playing that stupid, we can beat the system, outmaneuver, we can beat these guys on the chessboard. Say no, because they're just going to punch you in the fucking face. Well, they punched or if they're about to punch all the cypherpunks in the face. But what's going to happen after that? Cypherpunks are going to turn around and undermine with cyber attacks, and that's what we're seeing already. So the mere complexity of the machine and its goal-oriented has the seeds of its own destruction. So it is right back to the Epic of Gilgamesh, and the beast and the War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds, is the sheer power of the machine is where the seeds of its destruction comes. I'm not saying you can step away from the game, or you don't have to engage, or you can sit back and watch and it'll collapse. That's not true. We're in real danger. That is exactly what you say, is that it basically subsumes us. That is a real danger. But it would be it's going to be very tragic, and it looks like that's what's happening. I agree with you. Is the way it's unfolding is the people actually have intelligence. Psychologically, they're not keeping up fast enough with the rate of technology and technological change. So they're not defecting from the system and starting to resist early enough. So it's not a question of, the machines supersede us and perhaps life is artificial from here on. Maybe it's all robots and the humans are dead. It's like, no. If that happened alone, they could kill off the humans, but then they would die soon after. So in other words,
would agree.
They are reliant on us, but can they kill us? Fucking well, yeah. If you don't believe a machine can kill you, just walk in front of a car. So yeah, they can run us over, but everything stops after that. So it's a very fucked up tragedy, and that's why people need to wake up to it. But you see, Elon Musk in that is spoiling the water, because he's muddying the waters, because he's got this tech fantasy and says we must have implants or we won't be able to compete with AI. So we're not going to face the robot army. He's a retard. It's the danger is the things that you're talking about. It's
So I don't actually think he's a retard. I think he's a sociopath, and I think that he knows that his lies are it's very useful as a religion to mobilize a lot of intelligent people to do dumb things. So in his, I don't think he actually believes his story. I think he's.
Oh,
I think
no,
he knows
doesn't.
that.
I'll tell you that straight out. I can tell a South African grifter. this is you know, catch a thief to see a thief. You know, you got to catch a thief to know a thief. You got to be a thief. And this is like South African grifters. I'm enough of a South African grifter to see my own reflection. It's like, but no, I disagree about Elon Musk is fucking thick. And I only say that because I've seen him try to explain stuff like how, Newton's second law, and it's like, boy, he struggled with that. And you can see that, he doesn't understand F equals ma, which is amazing for the guy who has a rocket company. But also, I know him. I know some people that know him personally, and they give me a strong impression that he's a retard. One guy I know, he smokes too much coke for starters, and then but one of the guys I know, he said he knows him personally. He said like Tony, the guy I know is called Tony. He said, and Elon Musk said to him, Tony, it's like this, man. We're going to outer space, man. We're going to Mars, Tony. That's what we're going to do. It's like, oh, this guy's not very bright. Not very bright.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think I have a story from a friend of a friend of a friend who he had a child. His wife went into labor and he was working for Elon. He went back to speak with him. He said, "Oh, my wife's going into labor, and I need to leave the office to go witness this and be there for her." And Elon just loses his shit. Just said, "If you leave now, you don't think you'll have a job when you come back." Like, this is. He's like, "Oh, we have an urgent project. How dare you just propagate the species instead of going to Mars? Like, what's wrong with you?" Yeah. This is he's
well, he has Asperger's, so he's not whole, right?
Yeah.
He has Asperger's. He's not firing all cylinders, so you have to give him that.
Yeah, but I think he definitely dominates people through aggression and just destroys people when they come to argue with him. So that's the reputation he's got.
I know the type.
Working with him, yeah. Anyway, this isn't about him, but
those guys, Silicon Valley, they're all like that, man. Jesus.
Yeah. But I think it's there's other people who think that we're just going to upload to silicon and this kind of thing, the singularity, and I think that's absolute hogwash. That's just Christianity in tinfoil packaging.
Well, thanks, Ron. I would have to end this call right now if you didn't think that was
Yep. But yeah, I think that we need to like the whether something is intelligent or not is kind of an armchair exercise, because it doesn't have to be intelligent to end the species. Just has to listen to us. And I think that's where, if the climate wouldn't do it, then that would be right there queuing to end us. And I think that's my conclusion there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I understand where you're coming from. I think it is important what intelligence is because that's part of our therapy. So it's part of our therapy and our progression. So to beat the AI and stuff, my way of thinking is that we have to progress psychologically till we defect from the system and the alien cortex, and so or stop worshipping it in this way and start working against it to try and transcend it. So contemplating what intelligence is important, because I think that this automatic assumption that intelligence is IQ, and there's a lot of evils lurking in this this false assumption. And so it's well important to ask, what is intelligence? Because you need to ask, are these people like Jordan and are they really intelligent, or are they kind of these manifestations of this this linear logic that I call the alien cortex, which is IQ? It's a very different. You see, our society has a problem with recognizing IQ, which I don't think is intelligence, as intelligence. And so I think it's well worth delving into what is intelligence to make people give up on this program, which is, civilization is not intelligent. And so
I have a question.
That people don't give that enough analysis.
So if let's say we just kept the definition of intelligence as being, effective at attaining a goal within a narrow frame, and then
no, that's the opposite of intelligence. No. That's what I'm saying is not intelligence, and that's what I say is characteristic of the alien cortex, and
I know what you mean.
Artificial intelligence.
But if I posit that that's the definition, and then and then we say the things that are that end the game, that the alien cortex stuff is maladaptive, and intelligence would then be maladaptive. So if you're a Pirahã, then you may not be intelligent.
So therefore, it can't be intelligent. By my definition, by my definition, it can't be intelligent then, because if it's maladaptive and self-destructive, then it's defeating its own goal. So it can't be intelligent.
Okay.
So the whole goal of this kind of goal-oriented intelligence is survival. But if the pursuit of that goal achieves extinction, then it can't be very smart.
Right, because it didn't achieve it. But extinction eliminates all goal seeking, so it's not intelligent at attaining its goal. If it leads to extinction.
Or avoiding it. More importantly, avoiding it. It's not intelligent enough for restraint.
Yeah. So if it didn't,
you see, nobody talks about machines restraining themselves, right? They say, like, this machine can pursue this goal and achieve it. You say, yes, but do you have a machine that's smart enough to avoid that goal and restrain itself? No one ever asked that.
Right. Do you have other problems with intelligence or alien cortex type of linear thinking, other than it leading to extinction?
Yes.
Are there other problems?
Yeah, very much. And so part of the thing, and okay, we're going to have to probably end this one and do this one next time, but the thing is neurology. So when we talk about intelligence, we're saying, like, okay, if you're talking about flight, the first time we hear about flight is the birds and the bugs. And we look up at the sky and say those things can fly, and then that's where our conception of flight came. So our conception of intelligence came from wetware, particularly our own. So when they started on this path towards intelligent machines, we're talking about Bull and Babbage and the difference engine and Ada Lovelace and all of these guys, von Neumann and the von Neumann, most of them thought that they were on the path to making a brain. They thought that they were doing what nature was doing with biology. Now, if you talk to the neurologists, they will tell you that is so fucked up. Believe that there are two paths. the guys that are taking machine intelligence are fundamentally misunderstanding what intelligence is and what the brain is and what it's doing. And the neurologists haven't nailed it, but they certainly know that basically these programmers and silicon upload to silicon and all this AI, they're full of shit. So they're saying they know that what these guys are doing is not intelligence. And the neurologists are fishing around what exactly intelligence is. But a lot of it has things to do with, is it based on chance? There seems to be some elements of quantum theory, self-organization, but the neurologists know very well that what a computer is doing is not intelligent, because if you look at what the brain is doing in terms of self-organization, in terms of plasticity, it doesn't make any sense, because you can't get the human genome and express it as a brain and say, well, that's a blueprint for the brain. It's like, it's not a blueprint. It has less information in the DNA than the output. So obviously it's something, an algorithm that's expanded to become a brain. Now, how you get some bit of code to expand to be a brain is like, and then do everything like a little kid does as an embryogenesis and all the way up to a fully mature brain, and then still it's plastic. Then they know that it's doing something fundamentally different that we're missing. And the great example of that is there are a lot of people that have had hemispherectomies. They've had one fucking hemisphere, half the brain taken out. Now, you know fucking well in a computer that I cannot just basically go and take an axe to my Apple Mac, put it down the middle and say, well, it's doing exactly what it uses, running just as well as it used to. Well, a human brain does. So that's a fucking mystery right there. But you know fundamentally that what my Apple Mac is doing is not what my brain's doing, because I cannot basically put a hole in the Mac and have it work without anybody noticing anything different. So in terms of
that I work on do have that property.
Errors, the way it what's that?
A lot of the algorithms that I work on do have that property, that you could take a shotgun to the server room and it would be fine. But yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Like, are you an Erlang programmer?
Yes.
It's bullshit, man. They fail fast, and they just fail repeatedly till they fucking overload the stack and die. It's not.
Yeah.
If you have an Erlang virtual machine, and I do the software equivalent of halving all the bytes, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to work anymore.
There are algorithms that work like that with like the deep learning stuff is kind of like that, where you can half all the bytes and it still works. But yeah.
Yeah, depending on how it wired it up, right? You can't reliably do that. But yeah. I mean, it's a neural net is mimicking the wetware to a fair extent. I mean, at least it's better than procedural programming and silicon. You see, the reason why it's very interesting to pursue this point, because there's something which the physicists are also kind of always scraping on, and it's the nature of the fine structure of the universe. And again, I mentioned in the beginning, like Noether's symmetries and stuff. So it's there's something to do with what it's self-organizing according to some rules, and it seems to be that they have to have self-reference in them, and so that's why I came up with that theory of evolution. That's you have focal points and you have feedback and filters, and so it's definitely doing something like that. But how it self-organizes, it means that it is an expression of something deeper that we're missing. And computers are not an expression of that. They kind of stand alone and kind of hang in the air.
I would agree, but there's a there's something in between. Like all life is computation in a way, and the way that computers are built is a very narrow view of what computation is, and there's something in between, and is much richer that I think most like neurologists wouldn't understand, most computer scientists wouldn't understand. I don't know that any field practitioners have this as kind of built into our education system. Like for example, even when I went to university and they taught about Turing machines and stuff, they said this is strictly the most powerful thing that computers can do. Like if there's nothing that that is more powerful than a Turing machine. A Turing machine can simulate any kind of computer, and it's hogwash. And if you know Erlang, that's one thing that the actor model can do is there's this unbounded non-determinism where it can get arbitrarily large numbers based on the time delays of sending a message to yourself that cannot be simulated by a Turing machine. You just can't. And so you can get an arbitrarily large number without encoding it on the tape, right? And that's a completely deterministic thing. It's just so we were lied to in university, and our view is constrained. And really, computation biology is very, very married. We're just scratching the surface on how they're intertwined.
So I fundamentally agree about 1,000,000%. You don't hear what you've just said very often, and so it's very nice to hear you say it. But my glimpse of what's going on underneath is something which the best thing we could call is fractal. And so it's the fundamental mistake goes back to Leibniz, and in terms of thinking of zeros and ones, and this is what I said, I think, in the last one, is that the fundamental mistake is thinking that there's nothing in something, or 0 and 1, which was Leibniz really kicked that off, but he got it from the I Ching and yin and yang. And I was saying last time that the thing about, I'll say it again, Leibniz was thinking about the yin and yang symbol, the black and white, the Manichaean, something and nothing, God and nothing, the void and stuff. And so that's why he said that most elementary bits of information is, you can't, if you have all ones and all zeros, you can't have information. But information starts when there's a difference, represented by two states, and let's call them 0 and 1. And saying, and then we're off to the races with computing. But he missed something in the yin and yang symbol, which he was really thinking of, that in the white, there's a dot of black, and in the black, there's a dot of white. And what I was saying was, even the yin and yang guys missed that it's not a dot of the black and the white and the white and the black. It's the yin and yang symbol repeated, involuted in the white and in the black. And so basically, there's this deep universal involution, which is really something which really is unexplored in fractal. But the brain can only evolve and emerge, and embryogenesis can only emerge, I think, with simple expression of kind of Wolfram type expansions of these simple things.
That's true. Like the circulatory system, for example, there's more information in that than in DNA as well. But it's just a simple fractal rule that if you build that protein and long enough, it gets weaker at the ends and it starts to fray and then fold on itself. So it has its own natural fractal properties. So it's a mix of the environment cohering with computation and interplaying with it, and that's where what's wrong is thinking that the Turing machine can work with anything that there is, because when you look at the internet, for example, the wires connecting the machines, that's not a computable number. The delays in there, the timing delays, are real numbers. And so, and the same with our neurons, the dendrites and stuff, the time delays are in space, like a real number. So you can't encode that and upload yourself to silicon, because that if you were to try to simulate that by approximating it, it would drift, and the simulation would get corrupted within a few minutes, because the precision isn't there in our computers to be able to specify real numbers. Just like we can't do with our satellites. If you have, these are chaotic systems. If you put satellites up, even though we can solve, we know all F equals ma and everything, we can solve for things, like you still have to put little rockets on those to put them back into orbit, because you can't solve the n-body problem with all the different gravitational forces and stuff. It's a chaotic system. So the only thing you can do is simulate out a few time steps until you get your error too big and you have to adjust. So like this is the problem with our thinking about computers, is that essentially it's at that very tiny level. If you're just doing numeric computation, it's like the Procrustean frame at the level of a floating point number, where you just run out of precision and you can't express what is in nature.
Yes. So the way I would describe it, absolutely agree 100%. The way I would describe it is that our version of information in terms of zeros and ones is an approximation. So what all these machines are doing is an approximation. So nature is the gold standard, and nature doesn't approximate. Nature resolves down to the Planck length and further, for all we know. But it might have, nature might have infinite resolution, seems to me, at a guess. But the minute you're talking about zeros and ones, you're talking an approximation, and everything that follows from that. So if I represent you with a digital twin, it'll be an approximation. That's why you can't be uploaded to silicon, because it would be a rough approximation of an infinite decimal in the way that you're talking. So in other words, I'm trying to make an integer representation of an infinite decimal number. It's kind of like squaring the circle. It's just not possible. And that's what computers are doing. That's why I say intelligence is artificial and not really intelligence, because intelligence is part and parcel of that. It's not approximal. So intelligence doesn't admit to approximation, and everything that's digital is an approximation. It's a rough measure of a zero and a rough measure of a one. But you can see it even in the arrow things. Every time you get a, say, a cosmic ray bit flip or something like that, that's the cosmos telling you that you cannot have certainty in computing, because occasionally you'll get a bit flip when nature intervenes in your calculation. And then that's also why quantum computing is horseshit, because it's also trying to approximate something which will always be defeated by noise. And the noise is saying, like, okay, playtime's over. Here's a bit of the approximation that now has a butterfly effect on your calculation.
Yeah,
so
I don't think.
Again, like you say, the three-body problem. You can't approximate the three bodies.
I don't think you're correct that intelligence is never approximating. I think what it is that chaotic systems cannot be approximated sufficiently, and reality has enough chaotic systems. But that you, like, the forestry and things like that, that's a chaotic system, right? So it's more that intelligence cannot be applied to chaotic systems because they're unpredictable. It's not that they are so basically the only winning move is to not play.
Yeah, I'm kind of warming to this idea, but I'm struggling a little bit here, because I'm saying that intelligent systems, I'm trying to formulate a definition for saying intelligent systems are not proximal. That's why they're intelligent.
I don't think that's correct, because if you are you have to have some simulacrum of the external world in some sense to interact with it in an intelligent way, and that's inherently an approximation.
But do you? That's the thing. Is you don't really need a model of the world to interact with it.
I think in some, for the same reasons why I think Skinner was wrong about behaviorism, I think we were wrong about that if we were making that claim. There is some representation that matters. In that if you put enough situations in there, you'd be able to tease out a difference. It only appears totally determined by not having a representation because you're limiting what you're looking at to just inputs and outputs. But you really have to have some sense of otherwise, what is vision even for? How it wouldn't have any utility in evolution if it didn't have a.
But what's the point of utility?
Well, it keeps the algorithm running.
But
self-preservation.
Yeah.
It's self-preservation.
Yeah. So the things that don't have a utility don't.
The point of vision is filtration. So I would say the point of vision is filtration. So you have a chaotic field, particularly in the visual spectrum, and what an eye does is it just resolves it to a discrete point in space-time.
That is a very deep
it's
insight.
Really a filter.
Yeah. I would agree, and in fact, I'm going to raise you and say all intelligence is compression. It's taking something like a compression that is not completely losing the original. So for example, F equals ma. It's very tiny. You can compress it down really small to express it, but its expression. It's all of the, it applies everywhere, and having the AI and things like that is about compressing your the universe of Go games is bigger than the number of atoms in the universe, but you still can play it because you compress it down to simple heuristics and rules that do fit in the universe.
I don't
all of the
think
scientific
that's
method is
admissible.
about compression.
I don't think that's admissible because hidden in the idea that it's compression is that it is discrete. Information is just a 0 or 1, which is what I'm contending. So in other words, if it's infinitely fractal, you can't compress it. So so even the idea of compression is a false one.
No, because
well,
saying
okay. So let me modify that. I can compress a fractal, but in kind of the z equals z squared plus 1 kind of way. It's basically I can express a seed that will expand to an infinite fractal. If that's what you mean by compressible, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you. But
in the
my problem is my problem is that you can't take something like the hydrogen atom and find a compressor algorithm that will express it. So in other words, it's kind of against Gödel.
But you're kind of assuming that I said that it was lossless compression, where I'm saying it's almost inherently lossy, any kind of intelligence, with very few exceptions.
But that's what I'm saying is approximation. And I'm saying if it's lossy, it's not intelligent. If it's lossy, it's not intelligent. Because I'm saying that's an approximation. And if it was intelligent, it wouldn't admit to approximation.
Okay. By that logic, then nothing is intelligent except maybe the whole universe or the Hubble volume or something. Because there is nothing that can.
Yay! I think wait, you got to stop there, man. We just did better than Leibniz. let it be known that somewhere in this blue dot, in October the 10th, we did better than Leibniz and the rest of them put together. But in what you just said was a spark of great brilliance that is just going to be lost down the bit bucket of the internet. But anyway, I think that is extremely profound, what you just said there. I think that's a very, very good insight.
I was sitting here listening
I think we should all
to
just
it.
kill ourselves now. Let's just put this up on the internet and commit suicide now.
Yeah, I was waiting. I was waiting for that revelation.
I think
could
we've
see it
done.
coming.
We solved the universe.
Yeah. But
that's
I think it is a good one or a trivial one, depending on your perspective. But it sometimes can be kind of Alan Wattsy interpreted in an Alan Wattsy way, and kind of woo. And I'm worried that that's
what's wrong with that. What's wrong with that? I mean, I'm like Leibniz and all these guys. I'm only using mathematics to get to Alan Watts. To me, the mathematics and physics is only a pathway to Alan Watts.
What's wrong with that is that the terms are overloaded and people get confused. So they think that they're using, like, it's a use mention error when you're dealing with things. Like if you're saying energy, like it's not the energy from physics when you're talking about that, but people say, "Oh, I'm connected with the energy of the universe," and thinking that it's the same thing. It's a different term.
No. What we did was rare and precious, because we got from Leibniz and rational numbers to Alan Watts on a really solid path. So we didn't take a woo-woo step, and we got to Alan Watts, and I think that's what's brilliant about it.
But when you say something like
make a woo-woo step on the path to Alan Watts.
But it sounds very similar to panpsychism or something, where we're saying only the universe in its whole is intelligent. And I'm not sure
that's kind of where I'm going. It's kind of where I'm going.
I know that's the leap you want to make, but that leap is justified.
Yeah. I was just going to say, we basically stepped out of the subjective realm of mathematics and logic into the infinite subjectivity of the universe. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
It was a nice leap, though. I really liked it.
Yeah. I just hope it isn't a DPD.
Well, at least we did better than Weinstein. Will you grant me that?
There you go. I will definitely grant you that.
Sam Smith? Jordan Peterson?
Yep. This is really good. I think there's more to cover here for sure.
There is. I got to think about what you said there, because you did raise some challenges that are valid and deserve more thought. Yeah, but we got to a really nice place. But will you permit me this Alan Wattsy? Then we will just do our thing at the end, and do the woo-woo thing at the end, because I think at the end of the day, I really am trying to get to an Alan Watts destination.
Yeah,
so we might have got there with a bit of sleight of hand, but even so, I think I would like to indulge in that.
Yeah, I think it's I wouldn't go there myself, but I do. I think it's. Have you seen What the Bleep Do We Know? This movie. Yeah. That's the thing that I'm worried about, is that we're going there with it. And I watched that movie early on thinking this is my, the best thing that has ever been produced, and I was totally on board with it. And then I just, I had to slowly back away the more and more I understood about the world. And I think that so I have an immune system reaction to those kinds of things, where I want to make sure that I'm being careful so that I don't get, have my mind be so open that my brain falls out.
Yeah, no, it's a legitimate concern. But I think we should at least admit ourselves, so at least a glimpse of some kind of reality. So we might not have got the whole cat, but we might have seen its tail from behind the door.
Yeah, I'll at least grant you that it's poetical in a Carl Sagan-y sense.
Yeah, but see, I don't think you can ever nail this down. You just get various glimpses, and so you should enjoy the glimpses. Otherwise, you might get a million glimpses and never enjoy the journey getting there.
Totally agree with you.
I always think that
it's a milestone.
If if the bitch opens a kimono for you just for a second, you shouldn't say, "Ah, well, we're not sure what we saw there." We should say, "That was fucking awesome."
Agreed. Yeah, I just don't want to stop there. I don't want to be like Aquinas and just like, oh, I proved God, I'm stopping. I want to like
no. Yeah, definitely danger there. You see, what I'm all about is if science is infinite and physics is infinite, I'm all about an infinite appreciation. It's kind of, I see it more of like a love affair and seeing different aspects of a lover than being nailing down a corpse, which I think is what Western science is all about. A theory of everything would be the saddest thing in ever.
Yeah. And so, yeah, this was definitely a wave of pleasure. That's in that lovemaking.
Well, that's what I mean, is don't deny yourself the pleasure of it might be as good as you get.
Agreed.
So, okay, on that note, we better end it there. I don't know what we've created, probably something no one will bother watching, but all right, I think we should just pause and just for our own sake, and kind of in the spirit of what you were saying, is give it up and say that, if anybody thinks they nailed the corpse or got the universe and put it in a box, let's defend against that by just, falling still and just reminding ourselves we're not that kind of idiot, we're a different kind. Okay, so let's fall still and just connect with, okay, so we've been really abstract, alien cortex and stuff, and we had a nice dance in the alien cortex, but that is still, and the real world is still there with our senses. So let's try and remember that the world we're really talking about is the eye, and the eye that sees behind our eyelids. And look behind your eyelids now. See those phosphenes and things. You're saying that's what we're talking about. That's the world we're discussing. So it's our alien cortex doing a jibber jabber about what that really is. And so, what are we seeing behind our eyes? When we take a breath and breathe and hear, just be connected to our senses that are connected to the universe. The real universe, not imaginary one with cartoon planets and stuff. I mean, this one and only one. And we are definitely a part of it. So let's just remind ourselves that this is all superficial talk about that reality. And just connect with that reality through your senses, just to make sure that we are talking about this thing, it, her, the prima mater. Now, some people, for no bad reason, call it the Parama Atman, and what Ryan said was a reference to the Parama Atman. So this is all about appreciation of the Parama Atman, the discovery of the Parama Atman, and let's just remind ourselves that we can never nail it down, but it sure is fun to actually appreciate it, love its aspects, observe it, enjoy it, and relish in it as our own self. With words. Om Paramatmane Namah. Alrighty. Nice. Thanks, Ryan. That was really cool.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Ryan.
Right.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
thank
much.
you. This was
Thank you.
wonderful.
Great talk.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Yep, be
Okay.
safe.
Bye.